one more thing, and I am using the microphone because it picks up on the recording. So we might be also walking around asking people to speak in the microphone. For our neighbors that cannot be here, they'll be able to hear us better. Although I'm obviously not good at it because we're getting a little echo back, so sorry everybody. There is a sign-in sheet that's going around. If you don't mind signing in on that, that would be fantastic. And then I'll take that back and I'll give that to DGS. They've been collecting email addresses to kind of keep people in the loop on things. So that is the purpose of that, and that is my handy dandy notebook, so you can even look through it for my notes, which are in chicken scratch. So thanks.
That might be dangerous.
All right. Hello again, everyone. Jack Greaso with West End Sampson, and project manager for this important project here in the city. Again, this is the second public meeting for Manning Boulevard, so thank you to everybody who came back out from attending the first one. Any new faces, welcome. Hope to give you some more info about this project and get some input. So brief overview. Project goal, as was mentioned, primarily here to improve drainage and prevent the flooding that's currently occurring in the corridor, as well as provide pedestrian infrastructure safety improvements along Manning Boulevard. So some key objectives to those ends is to regrade and introduce some additional stormwater management, stormwater infrastructure, green infrastructure to the corridor to help mitigate that flooding. We want to provide pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure and safety improvements throughout the corridor. That includes making things ADA accessible. It includes reconstructing sidewalks that maybe aren't constructed properly, have the wrong slopes, or in some cases contributing to the flooding issue. And then also provide some general streetscape improvements such as additional plantings, additional green space, curb signage, mid-block crossings is something we'll talk about as well. That kind of ties into the pedestrian improvements. So those are just the kind of broad objectives and goals of this project. So quick summary of the first public meeting, which was August 14th. I can't believe it's already November, but it was August 14th at the library across the street. There were about 30 folks in attendance, along with all the representatives here from the city and county. And we went over the project, we went over the existing conditions of the corridor, we presented some initial concepts, and then we overviewed the schedule, and then of course opened up to discussions, questions, comments you all had. And I just want to take 1 second to reiterate that I know there's a lot of questions about the concepts. They were very initial, so the purpose was to show them and gather feedback, which we have, and we'll discuss some of the input that we received and how we're going to work that into the project and the design going forward. Quick overview of those two concepts that were shown. This was concept A. This had the bridle paths going single direction with a dedicated parking lane. Perhaps the biggest change was, as far as the main Manning Boulevard corridor, was the introduction of a middle median dividing the two travel lanes. That would take the place of the turning lane at some sections. And again, just reiterating from last time, it seems like some folks thought we were removing the turning lane entirely. We are providing the turning lane at all intersections, bridle path access points. It's just in sections where there isn't a true need for one that we were thinking of perhaps introducing something like the buffer here. Concept B, which was the second one, very similar treatment on the bridle paths. Again, rather than a median, more narrowing the road down to 2 lanes, and then again expanding that to include the turning lane at the various intersections and access points along the corridor. So again, quick overview of some of the comments we received. These are very high level. We tried to kind of summarize everything. So these are kind of the broad themes that came out of it. 3 main topics, the bridle paths, safety, and the main Manning Boulevard area itself. So first comment, obviously folks weren't super thrilled to seeing the bridle paths go one direction. That was maybe one of the biggest comments we received both at the meeting and in the public survey. Associated with that were concerns like how winter maintenance would work in that regard. There's also some comments about how curbing was desired along that corridor, as well as both concepts do show removing a couple of the access points to the bridle paths. So folks were a little concerned that might cause additional traffic convenience issues, especially coupled with going to a one-way travel lane in each of those. As far as bike and pedestrian safety, again, a lot of folks expressed desire for crosswalk improvements, intersection improvements, some additional traffic control things such as bump outs at the intersections, speed humps, those types of things. And again, just kind of general support for bike lanes, bike infrastructure, and those associated improvements. And as far as Manning Boulevard itself, kind of with the turning lanes, some folks are concerned how all this might impact the queuing lanes. So I understand that's a big concern now at all the intersections is traffic backing up, trying to get out of the neighborhood. There's some general questions about utilities, some questions about narrowing the lane. Does that really help calm traffic or does that exacerbate the issue? Again, talking about traffic control devices. With green spaces, folks were generally in favor of that. Some other folks had, again, some concerns that might encourage speeding rather than try to limit it. Specifically with tree removals as well, some concerns about how this might impact that and the plan, if any do end up having to come down. And then, of course, concern over the lack of current enforcement of traffic laws and speeding on the road. And independent of the design itself, just how does that all get enforced after the fact? So that was all from the public meeting. We also did a public survey, which we had about 56 respondents, 29 of who identified as living directly within the Manning Boulevard neighborhood. So that was open for a couple weeks here, August through September. And we're going to go over a couple of the questions here today and the responses we got. I'm assuming most of you took that survey, so it probably comes as no surprise. The first question was asking generally, I should say, about how you feel walking along both Manning Boulevard versus the bridle paths. And you can see generally people felt the bridle paths were pretty safe, had a nice aesthetic, were easy to travel along, whereas the main Manning Boulevard area, not so much. As far as why people typically travel on Manning Boulevard, again, there's a pretty wide range of responses. Most folks said that it's because they live nearby. That probably ties in with, recreation, exercise, getting out for walks with your family or dog. Other folks, travel on there to get to shopping centers or as part of their work or commute. As far as how people traveled there, predominantly folks use a car. It was a little over 50% of the respondents. Otherwise, walking and biking were the two follow-ups or follow-up methods that folks used. And kind of similar to the first question, but we asked how you would rate the visual environment, so just how it looks, how you feel when you're walking down Manning Boulevard. And you can see it's almost 4 out of 5 stars. People generally felt like it was a very aesthetically pleasing part of the city, as far as the streetscape goes. Again, kind of emphasizing safety here as far as crossing Manning Boulevard itself. Overwhelmingly, almost 2 to 1, folks said they do not feel safe, and understandably, it's a pretty long roadway when you count on the bridle paths. Again, that right-of-way is about 150 feet from end to end, so it is quite a long stretch. We also have some general thoughts just on how you would rate the design, as well as some comments on that, which we'll get into later. But as far as concept A, again, on a scale of 1 to 5, the average response was about 2.1, so a little less than half. And similarly with concept B, the average rating was a little lower at 1.7. So neither option really received any majority support, which again, these were initial concepts just to get thoughts. So that's what we're going to talk about a little more later. If asked if they had a preference, folks generally preferred concept A, which makes sense considering the ratings, but about an equal number did not have a preference, which either indicated there wasn't strong feelings or they felt that both didn't really meet their desires or concerns for the neighborhood. And as far as improvements and top priorities that folks wanted to see, again, these kind of line up with what the goals of the project are, but it was addressing drainage, introducing bike ped infrastructure, and the safety improvements were the top 3 responses. So again, pretty much in line with what the goals of the project are and what we're hoping to accomplish here. So those were kind of the easy survey questions. We had a lot of open-ended stuff where we asked folks to provide comments and their thoughts, kind of give a chance to voice your concerns and go more in depth into what you're thinking. So again, this is kind of an overview and very similar to the results of or the responses we got at the first public survey. But people felt the bridle paths were safe and friendly to bikes and pedestrians, while the main thoroughfare was not. Generally thought it was positive, environmental. As I mentioned, neither one received majority support. A lot of the comments about that boiled down to things we discussed, like the one-way bridle paths, the traffic control and enforcement issues, the street trees, bike infrastructure. So again, kind of very similar to the results we got at the initial public meeting there. And as I mentioned, drainage, safety, and infrastructure for bicycles and pedestrians were the top 3 priorities that folks identified. So as far as how we were thinking about incorporating that going forward, because again, just want to emphasize this is the first step in the concept development phase, and we want to make sure we are addressing everybody's comments and concerns and implementing as much as we can to make it a successful project for you all. So again, these are kind of summarized, similar comments been consolidated, so these are just general comments that we got. As far as improving the drainage and eliminating the ponding, again, our thought is we're going to be reconstructing the sidewalks that currently, most of them actually pitch towards your houses if you live on Manning Boulevard, which obviously does not work for drainage and getting that away from your house. So the thought is we will be reconstructing those that do that so that they pitch away from your house. And then in conjunction with that, we're going to be reconstructing and regrading those bridle paths and the buffer spaces in between so that the stormwater continues to run across into the buffer spaces where we're implementing stormwater infrastructure and things like maybe bioretention areas, additional catch basins, things like that to get the water away from the houses. And actually, again, I think I mentioned at the last meeting, the bridle paths are currently crowned, so actually half the road pitches towards your house as well. So you got that plus the sidewalk, you can see how you're getting the ponding issues. So that's kind of the most straightforward thing that to address. That's pretty a simple fix that'll definitely improve the situation. So one of the other comments we kind of talked about as well, bridle paths, a lot of folks felt they were functional in their current condition. They didn't like them going one way. A lot of concerns about convenience versus safety, how that all intersects. Like I mentioned, maintenance issues with that as well. So we did review, with other city staff, and based on all the comments, it was determined that those bridle paths can remain the way that they are, with the caveat being that they can't do any official lane striping or parking striping, dedicated parking, that can't happen unless it's striped. So that stuff will have to come out to keep it the way that it is, but we can certainly have them remain as they currently function. And then, it's the additional caveat there that because it's not striped, as far as bicycle, signage and shared lane markings and the like, we would have to go to signage to direct folks onto the bridle paths off of Manning, so the dedicated bicycle route would become onto the bridle paths. In addition, as far as curbing, I think it was mentioned last time, granite curbing is very expensive and probably would be outside the budget of this project, but we could implement a wedge curb along the house side. We actually don't want a ton of curb on the green space buffer Manning Boulevard side, because we want that stormwater run over the road and get into the infrastructure we're providing. But as far as on the house side, we could look into providing a wedge curb there. So third point here was related to the turning lane. A lot of folks said they liked the turning lane. It worked out was, it took a while to get it down to that 3 lanes with the turning lane. So everybody felt that had a beneficial impact on the neighborhood. So again, the concepts we showed and any concept going forward that we ultimately move forward with is going to include a turning lane. It's just whether or not that's for the entire length of Manning Boulevard or whether we limit that to the bridle path access points and the intersections. And as far as the queuing length, which was another main topic, once we figure out the design, that queuing length will be reviewed with the City of Albany traffic engineer, and he will approve any design to make sure that an adequate queuing length is provided. So just a few more here. Again, there's some questions about the travel lanes on Manning Boulevard. A lot of folks liked that they were being narrowed. Some folks suggested they get narrowed further. I recall one comment being concerned that specifically for Concept A, even if they are narrowed, get that buffer, they felt it created kind of like a racetrack environment. So I just want to address a couple things there. As far as the lane, there's another comment about how you got the lane plus the shoulders. When you're counting lane width and minimum lane widths, just keep in mind the shoulders are required and they are outside of that lane width, and that's primarily needed so that it can be wide enough to accommodate emergency vehicles while passing if needed. So those are a couple considerations that we're going to have to work into any design that we develop going forward. And as far as the medians, trees, all these obstructions on either side, they are shown to generally have a traffic calming impact, not a traffic or a speeding, encouragement. Best example I can think of is if you're driving through a crowded parking lot. I mean, that parking lot drive lane is usually 24 feet wide, which is pretty wide for, that. And if you got cars on either side parked, end to end, at least I tend to go pretty slow through parking lots. You hope people go pretty slow through parking lots. So having those obstructions and things like I said, trees, curbing, that generally will encourage reducing speed. And similar to the queuing distance, the city is going to be reviewing this, the engineering department, the traffic engineer. will be working with us as this project moves forward to ensure that the design is adequate, meets the needs of both residents and kind of the requirements and sizing that the city has to meet. Touching a little bit on the enforcement of traffic laws, we're talking a lot here tonight about engineering solutions, things like narrowing roads, curbing and the like. But ultimately, people are people. People will speed. People break the law. It would be great if nobody did, but it happens. So the concerns have been brought to the attention of the police department as far as that there's a general concern over lack of enforcement in that area. And kind of related to that, there are some temporary control measures that the city implements. So those could be looked into being provided, periodically in the corridor as well. That's something we're looking into. Touching a little bit on the pedestrian safety, and I think I mentioned this earlier, but we are proposing sign and signal mid-block crossings. They were in both concepts. They will be in concepts going forward, provided everybody likes the idea, And those are, I'm sure you've seen them driving around. They're called rapid flash beacons. It's where you got the push button. The beacons actually flash to alert drivers, hey, somebody's crossing here. There's warning signage ahead on each travel lane that there is a mid-block crossing coming up, because it's not intuitive, as it is at an intersection. So we are looking at providing those in the concepts. And similarly, like we mentioned, narrowing the road widths. And one thing just to touch on with the traffic control devices, like I mentioned, there's a lot of questions about speed bumps and the like. We are looking into providing those on the bridle path, see if that makes sense in conjunction with some of the other improvements we're proposing. However, upon review, Manning Boulevard itself cannot have things like speed bumps just because of the roadway classification. I believe it's an emergency route within the city, so there are some limitations on what we can provide on those main travelways. And then finally, before I stop talking here for a little bit, trees and lighting, there are a lot of questions about that, and I just want to reiterate, the lighting that's there now is proposed to remain as part of the project, and the trees, the ones that we're proposing to be removed are only ones that have been flagged by the city arborist as being dead, dying, or in decline. And just a note, those would be removed at some point regardless of whether or not it's in this project or another one. The thought was we were going to incorporate that in this project to limit the amount of construction disturbance within the neighborhood. So you don't have a crew coming out there doing all the road and then another crew coming out a year later, junking it all up, cutting down trees. So just keep in mind that these are trees that already have been reviewed by the arborist and have been flagged, again, as a tree of concern. And similarly, the city, and specifically the arborist, would be reviewing and approving any replacement tree that we propose, and we are intending to replace a tree for every tree that does unfortunately have to get removed. All right, so again, just a quick overview of the schedule where we are now. We've been doing public engagement for the last few months here. We're in November, so project design, we're aiming for kind of late fall, winter to get the project design, get plans ready, and then construction queued up for the summer of 2024, and I believe it's intended to be a one-season construction project. So that's it for me until we have questions, and more than happy to answer any questions or comments, concerns anybody may have. And again, just to note, there is a project page on the City of Albany website that you can visit for some more information. I believe there's still a comment box where if you have questions, you could submit them there. So.
I think we had some feedback. Do we want to try it again?
And
We did Manning.
just
When we did, we did Brevidor, and this thing was, let's see.
I was gonna say, if you want to use this, I can just stand near the mic too.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay. All right, go ahead.
Any questions?
Where's the mic?
All right, we'll start right here.
Stand here.
This is sort of a question, but more of a thank you and a comment. If I understand correctly, you say that by not striping and simply repaving the bridle path, we can maintain it as it is with two-way flow and people being able to park when they need to.
Yes,
Wonderful, thank you.
yes.
I just wanted to know what wedge curbing is.
So that is typically an asphalt curb. It's built up on the edge, so it provides a vertical barrier to prevent cars from, hopping or discouraging cars from hopping again. people all drive nice, we wouldn't need traffic laws, but you know.
Mike at 97 Manning. During the construction period, do we have any idea the length of time and planning for residents to park?
During the construction. Yeah, the specific details. Sorry, the specific details will be worked out as we figure out where exactly the impacts are going. As far as duration, the intent is that this is a one-season construction project that's usually, you know, mid-late spring through early fall,
The
ideally.
contractors will be working in sections.
Yes.
And all this will be up on the city webpage, they'll give a 2-week look ahead, so you'll know where it's gonna be working. There'll also be emergency no parking put up, so you'll be notified well ahead of time.
Before we start anything, there's letters that'll go out and there'll be door hangers before we start, so you'll know when that's gonna happen. Who's
What-
got the mic?
What are the proposed pavement treatments for both the boulevard and the bridle paths?
Are you referring like the material?
Are they gonna have full depth reconstruction, just like a mill and fill?
That's what we're looking into. The intent is the bridle paths themselves we've done pavement cores. It's a pretty thin surface. I'm not sure the exact depth. I don't believe it was enough to do simply mill and overfill, or mill and overlay, and get the pitch that we need away from the houses. So those will likely be a full depth reconstruction. As far as Manning Boulevard itself, it's gonna kind of depend on, you know, what the ultimate approach is. Again, we got pavement cores from there. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. But it's still in process, or being determined.
And is the closed drainage gonna be completely replaced, or?
The current drainage?
Yeah,
Yeah, so currently there really isn't a lot of stormwater in the roadway itself on Manning. There's a couple catch basins. So we'd be implementing additional drainage structures and green infrastructure practices. Ultimately, we'll tie into those and get out. But yeah, those are intending to remain where they are. I'm not sure at this point if they're being fully rebuilt or reused.
okay. And there's one more question. You had said that the work zone traffic control is gonna move in segments as you go through the project. Is there going to be, or do you know if there's going to be two-way travel on Manning during those segments, or is it gonna be alternating one way?
On Manning, the main line,
Yeah,
they're gonna keep that 2-way traffic.
okay, thank you.
I don't think it's that way.
I wanted to ask about the sidewalk replacement. I've had a number of projects when I was a property manager that involved sidewalk replacement, especially where tree roots were pushing up the slabs. And I know it's cheaper to cut down the trees than it is to do the work of shaving the roots to maintain the trees. And I'd like to know if there's a commitment to shave roots wherever possible, because mature trees along the house sides of Manning Boulevard are the character of Manning Boulevard. And to lose them to put a slab in more cheaply would be a crying shame. Second point, we recently had a small pavement replacement. I think it's the southeast corner of Lancaster, where a number of slabs were replaced. And whoever handled that project didn't bother to try to put lampblack in the concrete mix to match the existing color of the sidewalk, so it looks abominable. It's bone white where everything else is gray, and I'd like to know if that is actually something that's under consideration, or will be under consideration when you're replacing sidewalks in this project.
Yeah, so I'll address the first comment, or last question first. Based on our site investigation, we've completed a topographic survey to identify the actual elevations along the sidewalks. I think most of them will end up coming out, so there won't be a ton to match to. Now that said, where it is matching, we could certainly look into trying to make sure that it's a visually pleasing transition.
On Lark Street, we're gonna go through and pressure wash the sidewalks, the ones that are remaining. So
Yeah, and that'll
try to
help
get
clean
everything
them
to look the same color.
Who's going to have input on the color of the new sidewalk? Because that's a significant factor. I mean, if they're gonna put in bone white sidewalks, it's not gonna be in keeping with the character of the neighborhood.
I don't know why that was done that way. We'll have to look into that. What's on the corner of Lancaster and what?
Lancaster and Manning,
Okay, all right, we can take a
the
look.
southeast corner.
We can take a look.
And
Yeah.
new concrete is typically a lot brighter than concrete that's weathered over time. There are ways to intricately color concrete so it matches. That is a very expensive process, so we'd have to look into, the cost implications as far as it relates to the rest of the budget. But it's something we could explore.
It's called adding lampblack.
Who's next?
Oh, yeah, sorry, first question. Refresh my memory.
First question.
Oh, the tree roots, yes.
The tree roots and shaving them rather than the cheaper route of just cutting down big, old, healthy trees.
Yeah, so like you said, obviously roots cause a lot of heaving on the trees, and as you mentioned, sometimes it's easier to take them out. Our intent with this project is to preserve as many of the trees as we can. Again, there's a handful that have already been selected for removal that are in decline, but aside from that, as we work out the final grading of the corridor, we can make some adjustments so that rather than perhaps cutting the roots, we could look into raising them a little bit and mitigate the impacts to those roots, and then work around. At each mature tree, because they're so old, there's going to be some fine grading that will work out during design to mitigate the impacts to it.
All right. Who's next? All right, here. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Ben McCrell. I live at 109 Manning Boulevard, right at that Lancaster corner, and a board member of Capitol Streets, a local cycle pedestrian advocacy organization. I had a couple of quick questions. One was, I was recently, as you all were, at the Breviter meeting. And I think that's an incredible plan. I think you guys should all be very proud of yourselves on that. But I was curious about the difference between the roadway widths and what was permissible there on a street with a firehouse versus what was permissible here. I believe the roadway widths curb to curb on that street occasionally were as low as 12 feet wide.
The roadway width?
Yeah, the main travel way between the,
That may have been the travel lane, but that.
yeah.
Not the overall roadway width.
Shoulder width.
Yeah, like any travel lane that, whatever's presented, I'm not involved directly with that project. But
Yeah.
the travel lanes, again, keep in mind, they're independent of shoulders. So you'd be adding in shoulders on each side as well.
So you got emergency vehicles, fire trucks, you got to be able to get out of the way.
I would encourage you to review that project and what they were able to do there, because it felt like it was a much tighter corridor and it was going to reduce folks' impulse to speed along it, without, of course, minimizing that corridor to the point where it would actually slow down an emergency vehicle. The second question I had very quickly was, you said obviously with the preservation of the carriageways, the bridle paths, if you will, they would not be able to be striped or signed with bike lane
Just striped.
infrastructure. So
Striped.
what could be done to highlight those spaces to focus on the prevalence of them as perhaps play streets, something like that, where we actually focus on priority of pedestrians and cycles on that space?
Yeah, so specifically for cycling, at this point we're thinking about bicycle route signage prominently displayed at the entrance to each one. So as you're coming onto Manning, it's directing you. Currently, I believe it just keeps you on Manning, so the new one would direct you, towards the bridle paths and get you off Manning. No, I again, Bill can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure not that I would necessarily feel safe, but you are legally allowed to drive on or ride your bike in the lane. Still, if you chose to on Manning, but the signage is going to direct you onto the bridle paths. And as far as the striping goes, it's just without having a dedicated lane, we can't really put a shared lane marking because there's no lane to share technically. So that's why it will be signage predominantly.
Is there some sort of classification that could be done as a true shared street, all of some of the projects down in New York, where it's very clear, although cars are welcome guests, they are guests to that space?
I don't think we have that in the city of Albany.
Yeah, and you could. All right, I appreciate that. One last thought, and I'll share, and I'll pass this along, I promise. Is there something that could be done a la Lark Street, where it's traditional pavement, but that's marked with, brick imprints or something like that, to designate it not as a true thoroughfare, but a local resident-only, play-focused, family-focused street?
You're talking on the bridle paths.
Correct, on the bridle paths.
I mean, it's certainly possible, it's just there's always a cost and a maintenance impact that comes along with that. So it's something we could look into and assess, you know, how that would impact things.
Okay, who's next? Oh, right there?
Hi, Russell Simon, 51 Manning Boulevard. Staying with the theme here of the bridle paths. Well, one issue is for a number of years, for as long as I've lived on the street, the speed of traffic on the bridle paths. It might be helpful to post a speed limit for the bridle paths. There's something like 15 miles an hour. Delivery trucks are going back and forth on those roads all day, and the Amazon trucks and the FedEx trucks are always in a hurry, and they should be reminded not to be speeding through those areas. There used to be more of it, there may still be some, of cars who, in their efforts to get ahead of the traffic, will duck off onto the bridle paths and speed ahead, race, and then, you know, swerve back into traffic. I haven't seen as much of that lately, but I see delivery trucks every day speeding on the carriage paths. Pedestrian crossings. Just yesterday, I saw a man trying to cross at Lancaster. He stood there probably for 12 minutes. And finally, he jogged across.
Across Manning, not across Lancaster.
Across Manning at Lancaster. But, you know, there is a crosswalk there, but you can't see it, and none of the people driving there pay any attention to that. There used to be a bit more signage that might have encouraged people to stop, drivers to stop, but that is very rare. So that really needs to be addressed at all the crossing places. The proposal to reduce the number of entry points, curb cuts into the bridle paths, I think is a bad one. Maybe not quite as bad if we're gonna keep the two-way traffic. Would have been disastrous, I think, with one-way traffic. But I don't really see why we would need to reduce the number of access points in and out of the carriage paths. They're very important to the people who live on the street. That's how we get on the road. And
How we get to our houses.
right. So I would encourage, you know, some consideration of maintaining the access points that we currently have. On the issue of trees, those of us who have the locust trees, the bean-producing trees in front of our houses, we would welcome the removal of them. Whether other people think that they are character builders or not, I've removed 25 bags already, and there's still a bunch of them. I appreciate the street sweeper comes through and helps me, because I just rake them into the street and let the city pick them up. Nobody wants them.
My grandmother called them dirty trees. It's just any tree that had a seed pod, anything, was just dirty trees.
No, they're not, it's not my tree. I've offered to cut that tree down ever since I lived there. And I've been told that the city arborist will review this. And if the city arborist has ever reviewed it, it would be hard to imagine what reason they would not have agreed that that tree belongs somewhere not here. So, anyway, thank you.
I'll just list a couple of those, so we'll go backwards. Regarding the trees, you know, I understand your point. Obviously, there's some other folks that think very highly of all the trees, so it's just a balancing act as far as, you know, how we balance those needs. Specifically, you had a question about the access points. So again, that was an initial concept we were considering to actually address one of your other concerns you mentioned, so people cutting off of Manning onto the bridle paths. The thought was if we limit the number of opportunities they have for that, you know, it's more uniform where they're coming in. There's less opportunity for them to, you know, cut in and try to speed around somebody.
But they come in at the ones
at the ends, yeah.
Well, they don't come in on the middle ones.
Okay.
Wasn't it also to narrow the street?
Yeah, that was the other thing was, with the two initial concepts, at every access point, you're gonna need that turning lane that I talked about in order to get onto the bridle paths. So by removing a couple of them, that gives you a much longer stretch where you can reduce the width of the pavement there, whether that's with incorporating the median, narrowing the road, something else. So by limiting the number of access points, it's limiting the amount of turning lane, or length of turning lane you need, which in turn limits the width of the pavement. So those are just a couple of considerations as to why that was being considered. Obviously, if there's a lot of concern that that's going to negatively impact circulation on the road, we can look into it further and make give it another review. There's one other comment you had that I
If I
wanted
could
to
just say,
address.
those could also be right in, right out only if you haven't thought about that. That's
For
just
the
something-
access points.
Yeah,
They could.
just something to think about.
Yeah, I think you might get a similar concern. Again, we have to look into it, but if it's one way, if you can only turn right out of there, you're still effectively having to route somebody a long way around. So it really is just a balancing of convenience versus some of the other competing interests in the corridor. And I apologize, I had another thing I was going to say, but I can't recall. It'll come to
Okay,
me, and I'll
let's-
pick up on it.
Let's move on then.
Speeding on the
Oh,
catch
yeah,
basin.
that was just, the enforcement issue has been, again, addressed. That's more of a traffic enforcement concern, I suppose, than something that,
Signage.
yes.
Hi, my name is Jackie Daniels. I live on South Manning, but I walk along Manning often. And I was just wondering, you mentioned that a handful of trees had been earmarked to be removed. Can you tell us how many trees that actually is?
I don't have the plan in front of me, I don't know if Frank
Let
knows.
me answer that.
And
So-
where we can find out which
Okay,
ones?
so the city arborist has done, we just recently did a citywide tree inventory that looked at every tree in the city, all right? We actually did a town hall where we talked about this in the area, that we looked at 20,000 street trees in the city, what they were, and to this gentleman's point, okay, for anybody who's been here a long time, Mayor Corning got a sale on trees and planted the same tree everywhere. Okay, so as a result, trees are not where they should be. Our city arborist has looked at that, and there are trees that are being removed and replaced all over the city so that our forest is healthy, and so that we can make sure that we don't have the ash trees that were all planted are now all being taken out because all the wrong trees were planted. So there was an inventory which identified what the health was of every tree. So this has been on the list prior to even this meeting happening or any of this. It isn't completely finished. He's working on a plan now. We will be putting that on the website prior to anything happening. But these trees, it's important to remember, these trees were gonna come down regardless of anything being done here. If they have to be because they're dying, they've got issues, they've got disease, we don't want it to spread.
But do you know how many there are?
I don't have the final list yet. Like I said, we did this inventory, it's given it, he's looking at it, but we don't like to just say, it's gonna be this without giving you a plan of how it's gonna be replaced and what kind of trees. So that's being worked on now.
Are the homeowners going to be notified that trees in front of their
Yes,
house?
absolutely, absolutely, yep.
Where can we find that list? Will you put it on?
It'll be on the city's website. It'll be on this page, this Manning Boulevard page. There'll be a report, and it'll be on there. It'll explain what trees are coming down, where trees are being planted, and reasons why. It'll all be there, so it'll be good for you to. So be checking that page. Constantly be checking that page.
And what size are the replacement trees going to be?
Well,
Are they going to be twigs, or are they going
they're not
to
going to
be?
be twigs, but they're not going to be full-grown mature trees. If the city arborist was here, and I know this stuff because we've had a lot of these town halls. You put in more of a mature tree, it stunts its growth, you're better off, you get no benefit. So that's why there's a certain size tree. I can't tell you because I'm not an arborist, but he would be able to, and that would all be part of that report. So you would have all that information.
All right,
Okay?
thank you.
Was that, oh, right.
Ray Joyce, 54, Manning. So looking at the two options, and you're talking about green space infrastructure to accommodate the flooding we're seeing on our bridle path, but looking at the section views of option A and option B, what we currently have is islands now, right, between the roadway and our bridle paths is actually going to be a trench, because it looks like it's below grade of both the bridle path and the road, which I have concerns with because plows after one season, you're going to dump a lot of rock, salt, gravel into that trench, which was once an island, and what was grass and trees is gonna be hard to plant on. Is that the plan going forward? Is it trench?
So we're looking at a different green infrastructure. At this stage, we're considering a shallow vegetated swale, which is what you're referring to, where it's depressed a little bit to get water off the road and give it somewhere to sit. We're also looking at doing bioretention gardens or rain gardens, which will be planted with species specific for saturated conditions and that can tolerate a lot of that salt runoff that you get during the winter months. There are many plants that can handle that a lot better than others. There is a maintenance factor with planting as opposed to just lawn, but they do function a lot better as far as actually capturing and collecting that stormwater. And then in addition to the kind of those green practices, there's also going to be kind of like hard infrastructure practices, so that might be additional overflow drains, storm piping that's going to hook into the system, or the current system.
So my follow-up question to that is the trench gonna run continuous from Washington to Western? Because if it does, it looks like you're going down at the minimum of 2 feet, which means probably every tree would have to come out, right?
Yeah, so that's what we're looking into. We're not grading the entire island, because like you said, there's trees there, and you can't really dig a foot down under a tree. So, again, this is early in concept, but what we're considering right now is basically pockets, like little, collection pocket areas in between the trees that will collect the water, and then that will be piped, as I mentioned, in that hard infrastructure system. And as far as we are considering it between Western and Washington. The current low point of the corridor is right at the intersection of Lancaster. That's where those 4 catch basins are right now, at the end of each of those islands. That's where, as far as we could tell from our survey and our field investigation, all water eventually tries to make it there. That doesn't end up pooling on your lawns. So it generally will pitch towards that point where it will tie into that system and get carried out.
And just one final thought, the street lights, they sit on the middle of those islands because there's lights that shine both down on the bridle path and the roadway, so you got cable there. I just know, being a utility guy, just don't dig them up, please, so thank you.
Yeah. We had an underground location survey done, and it's all marked on our plans, so we're aware where all of it is, and we'll be working around that.
So we're actually gonna pass it to the right, they haven't had a chance to ask questions.
Thank you. My name is Anne Marie Lizzie, and I'm at 64 Manning. First of all, thank you to Commissioner Zioli and all of you for having this meeting for us. I'm actually pleasantly surprised with what you've reported and that you've taken into account the comments, so thank you for that. Couple of questions. In regards to the repair of the sidewalks, how does that impact homeowner lawns? Will you be encroaching on our lawn fronts?
The plan right now is to hold. Sorry, is that working out?
Oh, sorry, I did the wrong one.
Oh, that's okay. No, that seems loud. Okay, I'll hold it over here. Sorry, the intent right now is to hold the back edge of sidewalk, so that will remain where it is, and then grade out towards the road. So as far as encroachment on any individual lawn, we're not anticipating anything. There might be minor grading impacts to blend in the lawn, but the sidewalk would remain back edge where it is now.
And then as far as the entrances and exits to the bridle path, so I am in favor of keeping our existing entrances and exits for many of the reasons people have cited. Is it foregone that we are reducing them? That's still on the table.
Nope. And again, just to kind of reiterate what I said at the start, the concepts and kind of the ideas that were presented, this is our first pass. This is what we developed. We just as a talking point to get something out there. It's usually easier to react to something that you can see than kind of an imaginary plan. So that's why we put together a few options just to get some gears turning, get something for you all to look at, and then get the feedback. Like if you think all the access points work as they are, it's good to know, and we can certainly look into maintaining them. So this was just the first initial pass. So the goal of this is to get all this feedback so we develop a plan that everybody is generally happy with.
And in terms of narrowing of the main roadway, you're talking about narrowing the main roadway, is that correct?
Yes, the main roadway. So bridle path width would remain as is. The main roadway, we're considering narrowing it. It depends on which option goes forward. It certainly wouldn't get any wider. So if anything, it would get narrowed, or you might hold each edge but have some green space in the middle. Those are just the options that we were looking at right now. But it would be maintaining or getting narrower.
And then my final comment is just in regards to signage. Because we all appreciate, or most appreciate, the aesthetic of the street, I would just request tasteful signage that doesn't oversign, right, the area, and maintaining of the lights, the sort of historic replica light fixtures, which actually the city in 2004 to 6 invested in and put those up, which I think keep the character. And then I would also add, for many years, taking over as president of our MBNA, we have talked about getting signage that says "Welcome to Historic Manning Boulevard" on either side of the boulevard. If that could at all be incorporated into this project, I don't know if it can.
That would be part of what your neighborhood group would do.
Okay, it would be nice to try to
I think at the last meeting there was talk maybe incorporating a memorial garden at one of the ends. I mean, we could certainly provide a space for that sign to go in the future, give you a
Okay,
location.
so we could talk about that. All right, thank you.
My name is Alex. I live at 282. I just wanted to clarify something. So maybe I'm wrong, but at the beginning of this, I thought the intent was to achieve a complete street. Is that still the case?
Like the technical definition of complete street?
I mean, providing access, a safe access for all road users, right? So pedestrians, cyclists.
Yeah, well,
and
to provide improvements, improvements for all those and make it safer for everybody traveling along the street.
My concern is that the what you've just shown, it prioritizes convenience over safety, and I don't appreciate that. I like that you are adapting to the concerns of the community, but safety should always be the first priority. Thank you.
I wanted to comment, several people have talked about the speeding along Manning, and I'm not sure what the name of the organization is that wrote one of the letters that was posted on the website. I believe it's Albany Cycles, maybe. In that letter was what I thought was a terrific idea. Perhaps other people don't think so, but this would definitely cut down on the cross-town traffic use of the bridle path to get in one side and try to, get rid of bypass the traffic on Manning and come out the other end. Why not block off the two entrances on either side of Manning, both on Washington and on Western? So you cannot enter Manning Boulevard from Washington Avenue. You cannot enter Manning Boulevard from Western Avenue. That would keep the traffic on the bridle path pretty much residential. Now people could still go along there, but then they'd have to use one of the exits, or the cut-throughs as we call them, to get back onto traffic, and as anyone who's tried to do that knows, it takes you a little while. If that's a possibility, I would be very much, in favor of that.
We, we did kind of think about that and look into that. Again, there's always that issue of balancing the convenience factor. I know folks at the other end, it is sometimes convenient to get right out there. Actually, one of the biggest things that came up in our discussions was as far as snow removal goes, because you're creating essentially a dead end at the end of each of these bridle paths, and you have to, which is nice, like you said, for residential, but in order to get the trucks around for maintenance purposes, we'd have to create some sort of turnaround or a hammerhead or a mini cul-de-sac type situation. At our first pass, it doesn't seem like there's actually enough real estate there without substantially impacting a lot of the existing stuff there. Specifically, I forget exactly which corner it is, but I think there's a big National Grid gas setup on one of the corners. It really limits the opportunity to do that in that area. So it has been thought about, but those are some of the reasons why it wasn't kind of considered at this stage.
Okay, I think you responded to, kind of a general negative reaction to the first plan. When you don't have 50% support, that's really telling you something. And part of this, I think, is a lot of convenience was cut out by the original plan. And nothing was solved by making, in fact, there were more problems by making the bridle paths just one way. I mean, you'd have to go to the end of the bridle path to turn around to go south. So maintaining two ways is great. The access roads, as we call them, are also very convenient. If you live on any major street in Albany, you've got a driveway and you have to get right onto Western or right onto Washington. And I think the little cut-throughs give residents a number of places where they can get onto Manning. And with a couple of these cut-throughs, that's all there are, nothing is blocked up. I think having the turn lane, narrow the road if you want, but keep the turn lane so that people can do left-hand turns conveniently without backing up the traffic in back of them. Another comment made by people is slowing the traffic down, and well, you know, is this a police issue? Well, in part, but the police aren't going to be there, so just put up a speed camera with signs, you know, anything above 30, you are ticketed. On the bridle path, anything above 15, you will be ticketed. And so you don't need to pay for a cop to, you know, to be there.
I don't think we can, but the legislation in the state limits to 10 traffic lights in the city of Albany. There was a lawsuit filed in New York City about traffic lights.
But no, not a traffic light, a camera.
It's not, we can't legally do that.
And it's for running red lights.
I would love to.
Yeah, it's for running red lights.
It's not for speeding.
That is something that will come in. There is, we just got legislation to do school speed zone, but it's not something you can put up anywhere.
Right.
And also, we're not actually allowed by law to change the speed limit on the bridle path either. It has to be 30 miles an hour. It's considered a city road, which I agree is way too fast for anywhere in the city, but especially the bridle path. But that's unfortunately not something that we can change, or that they can change.
Two last little comments. When it comes to drainage, at 125 Manning, on that side of the street, the main drainage at present is down the sidewalk during a storm. And so, you know, if you elevate the sidewalk, well, then the drainage goes into the lawns. You know, you're aware of this sort of stuff.
Yeah, and that's kind of like those are the details that we get into more in the fine design of it, and setting all those spot elevations to make sure it goes away from the houses and into the infrastructure. Yeah, we're not proposing raising them, you know, and then pitching them towards your lawns, and certainly they'll all have a cross pitch. It's going to direct that water generally towards the roadway.
Thank you.
Thank you for the meeting. 115 Manning. Having lived on the street for a lot of years, there used to be a limit on the tonnage of vehicles that could cross Manning Boulevard. In fact, the only thing that was large that was coming through were fire trucks and school buses just to pick up local kids, you know. Now I'm seeing CDTA buses going across the between Washington and Western, and they're way over the tonnage, especially if they're the accordion style buses and like that, the larger vehicles. Is there still a tonnage limit on Manning, and will that be taken into consideration?
Traffic engineering would have to chime into that. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't speak to what the current.
Because that when you have those large vehicles and like that, the roadway gets, especially on the bridle path, is
It gets worn up. Yeah.
It gets real torn up.
Yeah.
A good point, but I don't know. Traffic engineer. Anybody here?
I'm feeling more comfortable, so. Can you hear me?
There we go.
I'm feeling more comfortable, so I appreciate you having the meeting and discussing everything so we can understand it better. My question is, are you going to do another design plan that takes into, you know, all these points into factor, and then do an additional survey to see if we're above 50% or there's a lot more people that are now happy with this final plan? Is that, how will you get consensus?
Yeah, I don't know. I think what we're gonna do is take everything we hear here and come up with a compromise. Because, I mean, that's the thing. We're hearing a lot of good information here, and I think the plan is to come up with a compromise and then come up with.
Will it be like a visual plan?
Yes, oh yes. It'll be a plan. It'll be.
Scan code that will give you all the updates.
Yeah.
What we're done with Lark Street is, as we got all the questions, and we put the compromise together and the plan, and we explain why for example, this gentleman just talked about buses having a tonnage. Why couldn't it be done? Because traffic engineering commented on it, on the DOT law number, whatever. So that becomes your main focus.
It will all be on the website, the plan will be there, final plan.
But you're not
board
gonna
on the
get
trees.
feedback again, like in a survey to see if you have consensus or?
The thing is that this is the feedback,
Okay.
right? We're hearing everything, we're taking everything in, and there will be a compromise with it, because, let's be honest, you had somebody here that said one thing, and then the gentleman next to him completely said something different. So we're gonna have to go back and see what can be done, and it's gonna be a conference, but it will be on the website, it will be available for everybody to look at.
And there will be a point where you could email somebody there
And comment.
and ask that question.
There's a comment box on the city
And that
webpage.
comment box will be on there now.
That comment box is there
If
now.
you think of something later today, tonight, tomorrow.
So you can look
go
at
ahead
the
and send
plan
it
and
out.
say, we talked about this, why wasn't that done? Somebody will reply back, this is why.
Could you just explain, the one thing I still don't fully grasp is where there are turning lanes, is there not going to be a middle green section? Or is there gonna be green the whole way, like, I don't
Yeah.
fully understand
I can, let me
that
pull up the plan
concept.
quick. So, and again, this was, in the initial concept, where are we, concept A here. So I know it's tough to see, but the intent is that it's green space except for at the intersections, the main intersections, and then at the bridle path access points as well. So again, I apologize, it's hard to see here, but there'd be a green, if the design was forward where there's a green median in between the lanes, it would be there except for at all the bridle path access points and the intersections. It would stop there to basically make room for the turning lane. Again, the intent is if we needed to add another lane and keep the green space, you're then pushing into the green space, so it's already there, the existing buffers, it's a wide right of way, but a lot of it is actually green space, and so we're trying to minimize the amount that we're impacting that
If
as
you
much as we
kept the
can.
current openings, you wouldn't, there would be, it
There
would
would be-
kind of be disjointed.
There would be less green space, and that was the thought with removing a couple of them. So, if it turns out they all need to stay, there would be less of that if a green buffer median is what's ultimately
I like having the
developed with.
amount, I do agree that it's important if you have to be somewhere to not get stuck in bottleneck, but it's nice to have the green space.
He said it's all, like we've been seeing with a lot of comments, it's a balance between convenience and aesthetics versus, service, or, circulation, traffic circulation. So we're just trying to figure out where that right balance to strike is, where, again, everybody's kind of generally accepting of it.
Has a final decision been made on if there's gonna be any divots or bumps in the bridle path? Because I feel like that could make it hard for bicyclists.
Yeah, that's what we're looking into. Again, it was brought up as a suggestion. I don't recall at the last meeting, maybe during, one of the other conversations or in the comments that came in on the website. We could technically do them there. We haven't looked into that option yet. So that's something we're still exploring.
And just one last thing, I'm very pro-tree, so I know that trees can grow quickly, but I also have a big concern. I think that after the initial concept, a lot of people were talking, and we were just like picturing like Armageddon on the street. And especially late fall, and it's just a muddy mess, and all our trees are gone, and it's kind of depressing.
Yeah.
So I feel better that you're saying handful of trees, but I would
Yeah,
love.
it certainly isn't a clear cut. And as Frank mentioned, the final determination, which I'll just reiterate again, that determination is independent of this project. That's kind of a broader,
Would it happen regardless of
Yes.
the
And there's,
process happening?
I don't know that it's gonna be an arborist or have a meeting with them for people who are super pro-tree.
So what we have to do is, again, we repeat, the report's gonna come out, the report's gonna explain what's coming out and why. The report's gonna say where we're going to put trees and what kind are being, because it's a matter of you put the same tree and Emerald ash borer comes back again, because we'll lose all the trees and we're all gonna die.
Well, the street has a variety,
Right,
that's what I
so
want.
that's
I
what
wanna
we're gonna
save
do. It
as
will
much
always
as
have a
possible.
variety. I promise you, that is what he is doing, and that's why a lot of them are down. So there are gonna be a variety, but then once that report is there and out there, we wanna hear your feedback. You can always send an email and he can get back to you with an answer, yes. If you have a specific
There will
question
be
that's-
dialogue after the report.
Yes, absolutely. If you have a question that's not answered, like I said, read the report, because probably 90% of your questions will be answered with the report. And then if there's an additional 10 that you don't, then you absolutely ask the question.
All right, and I'm at 90 Manning, just for the record.
Okay, all right. Who's next?
Appeal that decision on the part of the arborist to take down a tree?
I'm sorry, that?
Can we appeal a decision to take down a tree?
Well, I don't know. You want, if it falls on somebody's house, are you gonna take care of them, buy them a new house? I mean, Jenny will tell you on Terrace Avenue, because it happened, four houses got hit by 4 trees within a matter of 2 weeks. We had to take down 27 trees, all because they were diseased.
Not
And
just Terrace, it's happened on a lot
yeah,
of streets.
it's happened a lot. Who's next that hasn't? You haven't. Okay.
Hi, actually 97 North Pine, so nice to see all my neighbors here. I just wanted to say it's great to see that cycling is incorporated. The bridle paths are already a great connection that a lot of cyclists utilize. I think where we as a group definitely would like to see something happen is better connection to the bridle path. You're kind of just dumped at either end on 2 busy streets, but I understand that that might be outside of the scope, but definitely something for consideration. As a resident of 97 North Pine, the bioswales are a great idea. Anytime that we have excessive rain, we are just a little bit lower and we get about knee-high water. Especially if nobody goes and cleans out the drains ahead of time. That's something that I myself do pretty regularly. So definitely pro bioswales. It would really help the entire neighborhood, not just Manning itself.
Hi, I live in downtown Albany, but I still consider us all neighbors. So nice to see you here. Manning is a pretty important connector for a lot of people who commute by bike, and one of the worst places is the right turn from Western onto Manning. It seems like there's a lot of area there that could be a much more efficient and just like wide turn. And that would be amazing if that was incorporated into the design. And similarly, maybe I'm just describing my commute, but coming from Washington the other way, both the turning onto it for cyclists would be a very nice connector to have, because the rest of Western gets pretty bad versus you're on Madison after that before. So it'd be a very nice connector to have more cycling room.
My name is Matthew Bush. I live at 158 Winthrop. I like Concept A more than Concept B. I think that less space for cars and more spaces for everyone else is how we should be moving in the city. The benefit of Concept A that I see is that with the double road, with the lanes together, aggressive cars will frequently take umbrage with you going the speed limit and decide to fly out and pass you. Concept A prevents that and thus makes a safer street. I want to second the other motion about the other comment about bicycle lane entrances from the street. Those are really important, and I feel like they've been overlooked. And then a third comment, though, is that I think the city has done a great experiment with painting lines and calling them bike lanes, but it doesn't work. I can't tell you how many times on our Thursday night ride we go down a bike lane and there's cars parked in it. Always. 3-4 cars just in a few blocks down Madison, for instance. So the bikes need to be separated, and separate from pedestrians too, because that isn't great for pedestrians. Kind of like what the bike path is downtown.
I didn't mean to step away. I just did want to confirm we are doing some general intersection improvements at Western Washington as part of this. There's currently a plan to get additional funding for some more substantial improvements kind of along both those roads. So you might see some minor improvements in this project, but keep in mind it's always an ongoing thing, and it is being looked at as far as a more kind of comprehensive improvement project within the city. So.
Any more questions?
Hi, thanks. Ed Brennan, 389 McCormick, also with the President of the Albany Bicycle Coalition. So, just a comment about the speeding in the center area. It looked at, from the plans that I was looking at, it looks like you've got like a 12-foot lane there, which is really, really wide. The wider the lane, the faster people are going to go. And also, it makes it more difficult, of course, for people trying to cross the street. Those people are talking about in intersections. The faster somebody's going, the less likely they're going to be to stop at a crosswalk. The faster they're going, the more likely it is they'll just blow through the crosswalk, even if there's somebody waiting to cross. Also, there was just a study came out from Johns Hopkins regarding narrowing lanes and specifically looking at roads that are 30 to 35 miles an hour with 12-foot lanes versus 10-foot lanes. And they found 50% more crashes on roads that have 12-foot lanes. So I would encourage narrowing those the lanes, driving lanes in that center area as best you can. You can use those outside spaces either for, a lot of places use them for bike lanes, like a dedicated bike lane in the center area rather than the bridle lanes. Although I kind of
The intersections get tricky with that too, if it's in the middle.
Yeah, and also, or you could use it for more green space and more permeable spaces.
Yeah, as far as the lane, once again, we're showing 12. I'll just keep in mind, as I mentioned, Manning Boulevard does have the exact name is escaping, but it is a certain road classification. So we will review with the city and confirm what the acceptable width is for those lanes. But the intent is to narrow them as much as we can.
I just wanted to emphasize with the city not being able to lower the speed limit on the bridle paths, the need to really make physical changes to prevent speeding on the bridle paths. And I was wondering if there was anywhere where emergency routes, like what are designated throughout the city as emergency routes, is that public online anywhere, or is that information we could find?
Traffic
That
engineering
seems-
has that information.
I have to ask them directly.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So, some of the routes are just old routes. Anybody else?
They probably
Anybody else?
change
I
as,
have,
as-
did you have a question?
anybody else have a?
Okay.
I had a question, just a clarification.
You had your question already.
Just a clarification, so the center median, if we were to have something like that,
Like what's shown up in
Yes, if I was more in favor of the 2B, but if you were to have some type of median there, what are you proposing be planted there? Are they trees or are they low-lying types of vegetation?
So that's, again, it's kind of, we'd be looking at in conjunction with the city and reviewing, sight lines and all of that. The intent is that it would serve as a green infrastructure service, so it could be swaled. The plus side of doing the median versus the other ones, regardless of mature trees, if this is brand new, we can really get it to work a lot, cleaner, a lot more of a direct route for that stormwater, even if we do end up doing some trees. Bioretention areas, that's usually a mix of trees and, lower shrubs. So I can't speak to the specifics right now, but it's something we're looking into. I guess, follow-up question to you, do you have a concern with one or the other?
No, I was just curious.
Okay.
And then you're not intending to remove the turning lane, is that correct?
Correct, turning lane, yeah, so this green median or the narrowed road where it's just, the bidirectional traffic, that's only where there isn't an intersection or isn't, a bridle path access intersection. So the turning lane gets reintroduced at those points, and that queuing length is gonna be worked out, in conjunction with the city traffic engineer to make sure that it's an adequate length to prevent, I think there was a comment about, backing up traffic on the road. So we'd be working that out with him as far as the exact dimensions of it.
Maybe this is, how wide would that green area be?
In this one here?
Yeah.
That's really blurry, so I'm gonna look at my screen. It's about 12 feet. Yes, that's proposed now. It's basically taking the place of the turning lane. Right now you have, I think each lane is about, 12, 12, and 12, and you got some shoulders on either side. So, if the lanes end up being able to get narrowed a little bit more, that could get a little wider, but around 12 feet.
So we've talked about safety several times. I'm at 6 Manning Boulevard. So part of my entertainment is watching the accidents happen on the intersection.
There's a great YouTube video of those trucks getting decapitated on the bridge. I like those ones.
Those are good. I think one of the main things is that extended green light for traffic going west on Western Avenue that people don't notice who are going east on Western Avenue or making a left turn, and they get T-boned. And it happens, I'd say in a year, probably a half a dozen times, maybe more. And just removing that sign would probably save an enormous amount of risk, if not damage and harm. So I don't know who that's directed to, but it should go to somebody.
That probably for the city traffic engineer. You'd have to look into I don't know the exact reason why it's configured like that currently. You'd have to take a look.
Actually, it's just a visual point. Could you just point on the bottom of the concept there, I'm having trouble seeing, we weren't at the other meeting, we live on North Pine, but I can't see where Manning Boulevard is in that green space.
Oh, I'm sorry. So this is Western here, and then
Yes.
the Washington's over there.
Yes.
So this is the intersection onto Manning.
Oh, so that's Manning.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, this here, and then this is where it
Okay.
splits the bridle paths.
I
And then in this concept, there's a green space in between it. It's probably, I mean, it's a bit different than what it is now. So this would be, one travel lane, here's the other one.
I
and
see,
then
so up, like,
Up,
I
yeah.
see it,
Yep,
okay.
up there. And then, yeah,
Okay.
and this one here, you can see this one's Manning, here in the middle, again, with the bridle paths.
And I know we're directing everyone to the website a lot, but all of these presentations are gonna be on the website.
But
So you'll be able to
plans.
zoom in to see, go a little bit more in depth. Yeah, we have updated QR codes,
Yeah.
one that, for this meeting didn't work.
Thank you.
But you can also just go to the projects page
Yeah.
on the website
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
find it that way.
And there is still a form, so if you go home tonight and you think of a question, you can always send it. The presentation that we're doing tonight, the video will be on there probably within a few days. It takes a little time to put it together and load it. And then this PowerPoint will also be on there, and then you can always still ask the question.
Yep, there's flyers up here.
I just have one question, and I'm not sure who might be able to answer this, but at the intersection, I noticed it mostly at, Western and Manning, where pedestrians have to press the button to get the lock signal. What is the reasoning behind that? Because I've seen so many people who either they don't know that they have to press a button, they don't know which button to push, and then people just walk without, like, they don't have the white pedestrian sign, and they just go anyway. And I thought that it would be an automatic, and you wouldn't have to press a button to do that. What is the reasoning behind that?
I have to check.
Traffic engineering would have to answer that.
It doesn't actually, so the white pedestrian signal, I will say with that intersection, I walk a lot, it doesn't actually, it makes no difference in any of the traffic patterns, which I think is personally problematic. I would love if we were able to press that button and nobody could drive anywhere, because a lot of times you get the walk sign and you're crossing the street and somebody can't see you because of the sight lines and you almost get hit. So can I ask so I'm Ginny and I'm asking as a resident of 48 Manning Boulevard. So the access points, I do understand, and I love snow removal, so I don't want to make it so it's not possible. But, and this might be a terrible idea, and if it is, I totally respect it. But is it possible to do something where maybe you can just do a right-hand turn-in? So from Washington, you'd be able to make a right-hand turn-in, but then have a turnaround at the end, and then the same thing coming from Western? Because it is like, I will tell you, I never go out. It's just dangerous to go out of the bridle path by Manning, or not by Manning, but by Western and Washington. Unless it's in the middle of the night and there's no traffic, but even then, I think most people just avoid it. They're not really usable entrances and exits, which I think is a lot of the concern about limiting the number of access points. Despite the fact that, I personally loved I love the idea of narrowing it, but I also fully understand it's just not ideal to do that. So is it possible to do?
It's not just snowplows. Trees trimmed, recycling picked up, trash picked up, all of those trucks, none of them, they all need that space. So almost every truck that's gonna come and service all of your houses
Right. So
are that size.
so I guess that was my question.
So unless there's a way to do what they were talking about.
Is there enough room at like one end or the other to just do it so that it would be, because the other thing is when people do jump in, it is from the ends too. I would say, I could be wrong, but I personally am, if I could give up any access points, it would be the end ones.
Yeah.
Which I also know would not help narrow the road, but I was just curious if it was possible to consider maybe limiting them still, I don't know if that is possible. I'm not sure the size of the turnaround. It might be ridiculous even
Yeah,
if
it's
it's
mostly
only
just figuring out if
one
you
end.
have again, based on our first pass, I don't believe we have the real estate to do that, but we can certainly double check and confirm.
I figured I'd ask.
Hi, my name is Sophie and I live on 101 Manning, on the corner of Lancaster and Manning. First of all, there's no sign saying that it's Lancaster, but there is a pedestrian sign there, but I see so many pedestrians dodging for their life right there. You know, and I really highly would recommend a flashing signal at that point, because the cars don't see the pedestrians, they don't even slow down, and it's a real problem for people walking their dogs, people trying to, because there's only that one access point between the two. So I really would like to see some type of flashing light there for everyone.
If that's something we are considering, yeah.
All right, last questions. If this gentleman here and this lady, and then Thursday night football is on.
Hi, Ben again, 109 Manning. I was just curious, Ginny and I had a couple conversations, and I had a conversation with the previous neighborhood president, who was unfortunately out of town this weekend, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention she, myself, and a number of other local parents, by local I mean hyper-local, and it's a school night, otherwise a lot more parents would be here. Well, no school tomorrow, but it's a school day, end of the week school night. It's exhausting. So we did put it together a letter. I wasn't sure if Ginny was able to share that with all of you, but I would love to be able to distribute that memo directly to you as well if you have any questions or concerns. Again, not every young parent can be here. They would be if they could, and not only because that means that they're not at home.
We did receive the letter.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
15 seconds, like a football.
Just responding to what Ginny said, and my previous question, which would be nice to cut off the access there at the ends of the streets. How about signs that say "Do not enter"? But you can tell the garbage trucks, and you can tell the fire trucks, and you can tell the police trucks it's okay to enter.
Gone is the day, do as I say and not as I do. A lot of us grew up with our parents saying that. Today, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's, yeah.
Any more questions? I think this was a great meeting. My name is Sergio Panunzi. I'm the commissioner of the DGS. I want to thank Francioli for putting this together, our councilwoman, and the county legislator. Our engineering staff, give them a big round of applause. And I also definitely want to give a shout out to the Elks Club for hosting us. This was very good. And thank you. Again, we have flyers with the updated QR code. Please follow that link, because as we progress, you're going to see updates as we go through. Thank you. Good evening.